One of the most poignant stories in Greek mythology recounts the experiences of Orpheus and Eurydice, a story of great love and a story of parting. Orpheus was a famed musician, much loved by gods and humans. His music was incomparable, so haunting and beautiful that it was said to move even the terrifying stone-faced Hades, god of the underworld, to tears. Orpheus had taken Eurydice to be his wife, and their marriage seemed to enhance the power of his music. But then Eurydice died of a sudden and strange illness, leaving Orpheus stricken with grief, so stricken that he stopped playing any music at all. Gods and humans were troubled by this, for they missed his music and discussed what might be done. Finally, one of the gods approached Orpheus and told him that Hades, ruler of the underworld, was willing to return Eurydice to Orpheus, but certain conditions would have to be met. For starters, Orpheus would be required to journey to the underworld, the realm of the dead, to fetch her. That was a perilous journey for any mortal to make, but Orpheus so longed for his wife that he headed down into earth undaunted. He reached the abode of the dead, approached the throne of Hades, and stated his mission. Hades had been warned this was coming and was not at all pleased about the other gods meddling in his affairs, but a deal had been struck. Hades agreed that Eurydice could go back to life on earth with Orpheus. He attached one condition, however. Orpheus must not look back at Eurydice for the entire long journey to home above ground. He must instead keep walking forward, facing forward, and trust that she would be following him. Off they went, Orpheus elated at the coming restoration of his beloved to his life, Eurydice following him silently. On and on they walked, the road to the upper world seeming endless. Just as Orpheus almost reached the end of the road and could see the first signs of light from the realm of the living ahead of him, he could stand it no longer. He turned to look into the face of the one he loved most. He glimpsed her, and then she turned and fled, vanishing from his sight, as one of the monsters of the underworld moved in to block his way from her. Orpheus had failed to honor the agreement not to turn back, and in so doing, he lost Eurydice forever. As I watched the weeks of the calendar pass, bringing me closer to the time when I would say goodbye to you, starting with this, my last time of leading worship as your minister, I've been recalling all the times of parting in my life. Some of those were partings I was eager to reach and happy to be done with. Other partings I sought to delay as long as possible. And many of them, including our parting here, were a mix of glad anticipation and sadness of loss. I'm happy to head into retirement and set out on the next chapter of my life. I'm deeply gratified by the ministry you and I have done together this past year and a half. I'm grieving the losing of relationships with you individually and collectively as a congregation, knowing that however we part or come together in the future, I will no longer have the privilege of being your minister. All of which leaves me feeling much as I imagine Orpheus felt as he struggled and ultimately failed against the natural desire to look back at what had gone before. This myth is a kind of cautionary tale for us and how we handle our parting from one another in these final days of parting as minister and congregation and in all the partings of our lives. We need to resist the temptation to go back to what is being left, to keep turning back to what used to be. to keep holding on to those we leave in the life that was previously ours. For in doing so, we actually push all the people and places we love farther from us. That grasping, trying to hold on, defeats our very desire to keep all that close. Instead, the challenge Orpheus faced is our challenge, the challenge to keep moving into the future of our lives without trying to cling to the past. A pretty tough order, given the desire to keep what has been meaningful to us, to keep close the people we love. A tall order in any spiritual community where traditions and ways of doing things come to define who we are and how we will be in the world. Though moving forward may seem to place what and who we love forever out of reach, the opposite happens. In a mysterious way, moving forward without looking back helps what we leave stay with us, means we get to carry it along with us as it accompanies our forward journey in a new way. Unitarian Universalist minister Reverend Karen Herring, in her book Trusting Change, invites us to see the image of a threshold, that literal object that separates one room from another or the outside from the inside, instead as being present in a metaphorical way on all the edges of our lives. We then experience those edges not as solid boundaries, but thresholds, places where change is already coming and is already underway. To live with that image, she suggests we consider a new verb, thresholding, to describe an ongoing dynamic. Much as I might say, I'm walking, or I'm breathing, or I'm moving, Reverend Herring invites me to say I am thresholding as a way of focusing on the energy of change that is all around me and in me all the time. But simply taking up a new term, like thresholding, will not be meaningful if I do not also consider how I may not automatically know how to do this thing called thresholding. I may need to learn how to threshold skillfully so that I don't trip or collide with the metaphorical doorway's edge, so that I don't drop whatever I want to carry with me across the threshold, so that I don't forget to leave room in my hands and my life for what might be waiting for me on the other side of the threshold. So Reverend Herring sets out in her book several skills I need to master in order to live my thresholds. And the first skill of thresholding, on which all other skills build, is the skill of letting go. Not shoving aside, not throwing to the ground, not stuffing into the garbage, not pushing into somebody else's hands for them to carry, but releasing, gracefully opening my hands finger by finger by finger until whatever has been in my hands in my life has been released, much as one might let go a helium-filled balloon and watch it float away. Ever since I took up the work of interim ministry, which requires a willingness to relocate frequently, the words of Blue Boat Home, never harbor or port have I known, haunt me, and I have found myself challenged to keep letting go over and over, to let go possessions that I simply could not face packing up one more time, to let go of favorite places in a community I was leaving, and hardest of all, to let go of the people in the congregations I served, to let them go so that they could turn to fully embrace the minister who would be following me. In the training given all interim ministers, we're provided with several strategies to assist us in letting go, and at least, so it goes in theory, to assist our congregations in letting go of us. We're told to remind the congregation frequently that we won't be sticking around. Our contracts are written with a promise in it that we will not try to finagle some way to hang on beyond the appointed time. It is suggested to interim ministers that we tell congregants we are pre-fired so they know from the outset and take comfort from the fact that we will be gone. Some colleagues use the strategy of bringing a suitcase up on the chancel for the first several Sundays to reinforce the image of ourselves as just passing through. And we're advised to avoid using pronouns which imply we are part of the congregation and its life, that we don't say our church or our budget or our sanctuary or our work or our challenges, but instead to keep insisting on a separation, to say your church, your budget, your sanctuary, your work. Perhaps you've noticed, but in case you haven't, I haven't used any of those tricks. I have to admit, I think the suitcase idea is trite, and I think the term pre-fired is harsh. And while I see the value in avoiding pronouns that imply I'm a part of all of you here, in the end, I just can't go along with that. Ministry, to me, only works if it is relational. So I believe my job has as its most important element building a relationship with the congregation I serve. What I found from the day I first set foot here was a warm and wide invitation from you to enter that relationship. Why would I say no thanks? Yet the willingness to not keep a distance means that when the inevitable threshold of parting comes, it's so much harder to let go. But letting go is essential if you and I are to step across the next threshold before us, a threshold that invites us into a life we cannot see clearly or fully at the moment, but a life that is there nonetheless, beckoning. We can trust new life awaits us because we've known love here, and that's how love works. It draws us towards one another and then sends us on, widening our hearts over and over. No ministry is ever finished. That is, no ministry that is being created in a vital and growing church is ever finished. Ministers come and go. The ministry of the congregation remains. Another story I've been reminded of in this threshold time is a story in the Hebrew Scriptures, the Old Testament of the Bible, when Moses and the Hebrew people, after the difficult journey out of Egypt and 40 years of wandering in the wilderness, finally stand on a high place overlooking the Promised Land. They are almost at the long-sought destination, and Moses is not going to be leading them for that last leg of the journey. He hands the people on to his successor, who will benefit from the leadership Moses provided while Moses steps away into the mist. To know that you will soon be welcoming a new minister to lead you is not always an easy fact for me to accept. Yet the paradox of ministry is that we are already in the Promised Land, we've already been living there, and it is at the same time still out there, yet to be reached. Minister and congregation are always building and traveling farther at the same time. The work is never done, and yet so much is accomplished. I've been so honored to journey with you this far. I'm eager to see where you will go with your settled minister, what new promised lands you will move into. In a moment, we will sing the familiar hymn, Simple Gifts. The lyrics talk of finding oneself in a place just right, that while one is in that place just right, it's a valley of love and delight. During my time with you, you have been a place just right for me, where our partnership was easy and strong. That has meant our ministry together flourished, as again and again something new was created here. Though I'm leaving, this place just right I experienced here goes with me, because this place, all of you, have become part of me and will be part of me forever. So know that I will be forever grateful to you for this time we had in this valley of love and delight.